David, a couple of weeks ago, you tried to bring to the floor the debate around Castle Law, and it was voted down. What were the sentiments from Labor and the Independents? What were their reasonings that we shouldn't have Castle Law or that Victorians shouldn't have a right to defend themselves?
I thought their reasoning it was incoherent. It didn't make any sense at all to me. Anyone watching this can go and read Parliament Hansard and read what they said. Didn't really make much sense at all. I got the feeling that Labor was sort of very half-hearted in their opposition to it, and in fact, many of the MPs I feel were sympathetic to what I was trying to do. It was quite minimal what I was asking for. I wanted a review of the current laws, taking into account the UK laws, which I believe have a better. They side more on the rights of the homeowner. But really, we were just asking for a review of the laws, which is a totally legitimate and normal thing for the government to do, and they didn't want to do it. And frankly, I feel like they regret that actually, because the media response, not just the media, but like the general response through all channels, was just so massively positive. It's a very popular idea that people should be able to defend themselves, but I think there's another thing that needs to be tied to this, is that people need a means to defend themselves. I've been talking for a long time now about pepper spray. It's only recently been legalised in Northern Territory. It's been legalised in Western Australia for a long time. And I'm going to continue fighting for that as well, because I think that there's many, many Australians, Victorians that feel vulnerable for whatever reason, and they want some means to defend themselves. The police can't be everywhere at the same time. And I think that many people want to purchase it. And in fact, the reality is, and this is what I'll be bringing up in Parliament this week, the reality is thousands of Victorians are already purchasing pepper spray. It's easy to buy online. And sooner or later, the government's going to have to face the reality that, and a lot of these people that have been purchasing it are women. So sooner or later, the government's going to have to face the fact that women are going to get charged with prohibited weapons offences and face jail time. Now, the government has to say, do they really, really support that or not? Yeah. Because that's the reality of the current law.
Can I speak to that for a second? As you guys know, we had our home invaded last year, and I'm not over it. Finally we're leaving this house, and I've never felt comfortable in this house since it happened. We'd been in here 2 weeks, and every night it's the same thought: will they come back? Are they going to break in? Is my car going to be there in the morning? And obviously, part of that's an overreaction on my behalf, but it's that seed that gets planted when you are exposed like that. We had youths come in through the garage door. They came in and ransacked the house and stole a car. Now, I've said to my partner, when he goes away or when I'm home alone, I am genuinely fearful, because I like these kids, I call them kids. They're bigger than me. I'm pretty strong, but I'm under no illusion that I could fight them off, particularly if they've got a machete, right? I don't want to get dismembered. But as a woman, I grew up in the generation where we were talking about Jill Ma and talking about, women need to take their headphones out when they're walking home at night. And, I'm also the generation that was taught stranger danger. Don't get into cars with strangers. So, all of this is sort of drummed into you, but never once do we talk about how to actually defend ourselves if something like this happens. And, I feel weird saying this online, but my worst fear is being raped. That is something that in my eyes would be the worst thing that could ever happen to me. But now seeing what's going on, we heard that egregious case up in Cairns where a woman was held at knife point and her partner was forced to watch her get raped by 2 teenagers. And my partner's mother lives in Cairns. And so that hit a little bit too close to home. And all of these stories coming out about, the man who was assaulted 11 times in his home during a home invasion. So it's no longer about, hey, when you're walking home at night, it's 10 o'clock at night, take your headphones out, walk where the lights are, be on the phone to someone, have your keys in your hand. It's beyond that. It's now I can be in my home, dead asleep, and people will come into my house and potentially assault me to try and steal my wallet or my car. And this has put the fear of God in me. And I don't think it's hyperbole to say that I think a lot of Victorian women feel this way. We already had that threat. We already had that seed. But now we're seeing these kids come into the homes with machetes, and there is absolutely total disregard for life. And so to hear the the Labor MPs, sorry, I know I'm rambling, but to hear the Labor MPs getting up there and saying that, we shouldn't have access to things like pepper spray, which is, it hurts someone's eyes. I'm not cutting off their hand with a machete. I'm not shooting him in the chest fatally. What it is I'm trying to spray them in the eye to get away, to buy myself time. But the Labor government, who's saying they care about domestic violence, they care about women's rights, they care about the safety of women, but at the same token, they won't allow us to defend ourselves. And, that ambiguity around castle law, but also the prohibition of being able to carry, any knives of your own, pepper spray. It's nonsensical to me. And what are we teaching young women? I know this speaks to all people, but particularly women. You can't defend yourself, so just shut up and get raped? Is that the sentiment? Because that's how it feels.
That is what some people say.
The government talks a lot about empowering women, and I think the Libertarians really want to empower women and allow them to fight back. Now, I would say on the issue you brought up of Carly, of knives, I wouldn't recommend people carry knives unless they're, well, firstly because it's illegal, but secondly, unless you're very well trained in how to use one, they can be very easily turned against you. This is why I recommend pepper spray, even in places like the United States, where concealed carry of firearms is legal. Pepper spray still remains the most popular form of self-defense, and it's easy to understand why. It's doesn't require special training. It's light. It's cheap. It's non-lethal. It's highly effective. It's so effective that the police use it. It's not heavy and big, and you don't need to train every weekend to maintain your use of it. So it sort of makes sense that people would use it. You can easily just put it in your handbag. And I think that when Victorians start looking at Northern Territory and people buying it in Northern Territory and feeling a little bit more comfortable about, if someone attacks me, at least I've got something, right? They're going to say, well, why can't we have that? Why are Northern Territorians allowed to protect themselves a little bit and Victorians aren't? And that's a totally legitimate question. They should be asking that question. Victorians should feel outraged that the government has left them defenseless. And you're right, Kelly, it is women that are organising this, because they're the ones that feel the most vulnerable, not just women, also older people. I've spoken to a lot of older people that have contacted me and said, thank you for bringing this up. I'm older, I can't defend myself. It's usually not men that want this, because men sort of have this idea, whether it's true or not, but they sort of have this idea that if someone comes into their house, they're going to deal with them, right? But that's probably not true, but I know lots of guys like to think like that. But I think it's really important that people have some means of defending themselves, and cause the crooks to think twice before acting. If they don't know if you're carrying some spicy heat, maybe they'll think twice. They might think, well, I'm going to end up on some YouTube video with everyone laughing at me because I'm squealing like a baby on the ground with pepper spray in my face.
Well, sorry,
Carly. Can I jump in with this comment here from Deaf Black Fella? Anyone with any kind of a disability is at a significant disadvantage. There's the obvious one: someone who's in a wheelchair, someone whose mobility is restricted, are obviously at a huge disadvantage. But also, anyone who's elderly, anyone who's frail, anyone for whom simply being pushed over could break bones is at a huge disadvantage. But then there are other people like Deaf Blackfella where just their ability to be aware of what's going on around them is limited. It's not their fault. It's just how it is for them. And for these people to be forced at the whims of politicians who, let's be honest, they're going to get a better response time if they call the cops. They're going to get a better response time than most of us. Some of them have actual, police protection all the time for various reasons. Many of them don't. But they tend to not have these sorts of concerns themselves. And I think it's deeply cruel to actually deny people like Deaf Blackfella and others just any kind of options. Well, sorry, Carly. Oh, sorry, David.
There was a really interesting incident the other week where I think it was broadcast everywhere in the media. I'm sure everyone here saw it, where the Premier and the Treasurer were doing a presser, and it looked like, I couldn't see on camera any security. There were a few guys there, but they just looked like advisors. They didn't look like security people at all. I see a lot of security people around Parliament. They were not security people. They just looked like advisors. And then these neo-Nazis come up and start yelling at the Premier, and I saw the look on their faces, they were scared, right? They were scared, and I'm thinking, that sort of feeling, maybe they got a taste of what it feels like to be a normal woman on the street in Victoria, because like that could happen to anyone. And if they had some pepper spray, maybe they could have dealt with him. I don't know. Like,
Well, you've survived another episode and you're still here watching. So at this point, you should probably go and subscribe. And if you don't, you are going to be at the wrath of Spicy Carls. And whilst you're there, empty your pockets. There's a buy us a coffee button, and we'd really appreciate it so that I can show up every day and just make Topher's life an absolute living hell. Much appreciated.